If you come from poverty like me, I mean, you can't imagine sometimes. You feel like there's no way out. And yet I'm here to tell you that there is a way out. I'm a person of faith. And so this show is going to be about faith and culture and about you and about me as an older person pouring into your lives. So I'm looking forward to it. Hello, I'm so excited to welcome you to the first episode of Against All Odds. Now, that's a title that may have you wondering, like, what are we going to talk about? Well, there's an endless number of topics that we can talk about, but Against All Odds is about overcoming. And many people, depending on where they are in life, they find themselves sometimes against a brick wall, or so it seems. And what I would like to do is to encourage viewers, wherever you are, whatever your situation is, to know and have confidence that there is purpose in your life and you can be an overcomer. When I think about my life, I started off in poverty that's unimaginable for many of you all, because today when we talk about being poor, often we're talking about people that maybe they had one car, or maybe they shared a bedroom, with a sibling, or maybe they were poor enough that they were on public assistance. And so there are different levels of poverty. But for me, and I was born a long time ago, a lot longer than any of you all, and you may have heard some of these stories from your grandparents, but I was born in rural poverty in southwestern Virginia. Now, there's urban poverty and there's rural poverty. With urban poverty, usually you can catch the bus, you can go to a library, you can go to a museum, you can actually get out in the world and do things that are intellectually stimulating. You're exposed to a lot of people. When I was born, I lived in a 2-room shack for the early part of my life. And the poverty that I experienced, first of all, the shack was very tiny. It probably was not more than 400 square feet. I don't believe it was that large. It had 2 rooms, and the children slept on the kitchen floor. And so the family grew to be 12, but not all 12 lived in the house at the same time. But the first children, I would say the first maybe 4 or 5 slept on the kitchen floor. And then the house was expanded to 4 rooms. The children had their own room. We had a bed for the girls, a bed for the boys. All kinds of things would happen when you have people packed into a bed. Someone inevitably pees, and and everyone's trying to figure out like who peed on me. But that's the unpleasant circumstance when you have people of different ages packed into a bed. The poverty also was such that we did not have indoor plumbing. Like for most people, no matter how poor they are, they have a bathroom. They can turn on a faucet and get water when they want it. But we had to carry our water, not from a neat little spring with a pump, but from I would describe it more as a mud puddle. Sometimes it was clear, but it was a spring. We had to carry that water into the house to cook and bathe with, and we heated our bathing water up in a pail, and several people bathed from the same cruddy pail of water. Most people, that are poor, they have deodorant. For myself, I didn't have deodorant. So when I was going to school, I made my own. And so you wondered, how did I make deodorant? I used detergent. I put it under my arms, and you can imagine what would happen when I started to perspire. I would have soap suds oozing from under my arms, and it also made for rawness. So that's a little glimpse of the poverty. No one in my family had finished college or even high school in the immediate family. And my prospects of going to college, even though I did well in school when I was in school, I could miss numerous days and still earn an A or B My older sister and I, we were really gifted academically, and so we were able to do well in school despite the poverty. But it was very difficult, to be in those circumstances. We were the children that were bullied, we were shamed, and today you hear a lot about bullying, and it's terrible to be bullied. But the bullying that I experienced was because of my poverty. The kind of ill-fitting clothes, I'm sure we didn't smell so good, and the lunches. And you said lunches? Well, I can tell you that my mother was not a believer in handouts. And so she had that Protestant work ethic that we didn't take handouts, so that meant we didn't get free lunches, we didn't get free books. She packed our lunch. So she made biscuits, and she'd put, some kind of meat in the biscuit or jelly or whatever we had, and we'd take those biscuits to school where we were teased because of our lunches. Having white bread, sliced store-bought bread, that was a status symbol in school, and so if you had biscuits, then that meant you were really poor. As a consequence, my siblings and I, we did not eat our lunch in school. We ate it before school or after school, but we were not going to be caught dead eating those biscuits in front of people. And so that was the kind of poverty. But I knew that I was smart, and I believed in America. And I knew that the civil rights movement was taking place. So this was in the 1960s when I was going to school. And I remember even with all that poverty, at some point we had electricity, and we watched, television. I saw the assassination of President Kennedy, as well as the civil rights marches, the civil rights movement. And so there was a sense of optimism. And I knew that America was changing, and that it was changing in a way that benefited me and people like me. But despite all of that, my life took a turn where I married at 16 to get away from home, dropped out of school after the 8th grade, and started my journey, who I am today as a person, who has been tenured at an Ivy League school, Princeton, as well as at Vanderbilt. That is against the odds. It's against the odds that someone from rural Southern poverty, parents not high school or college educated, would become a university professor. It's also against the odds that someone like me, and I can tell you that I grew up painfully shy, so shy that if someone asked me my name, I could literally forget how to speak. And I can remember wanting something, needing something, being hungry, and I would not be able to formulate words. I would have to think about how to speak, and there was a kind of terror. And even when I was in college, it was difficult at times, to get that class participation grade. I always got it, but I tell you how I did it. I did it by either writing out a question, which I read, or a comment, and I would write it out on paper. I would read it, and my voice would be quivering, and I would be shaking, and I was in terror. And when circumstances happened, people came into my life. They steered me into academia, and because I couldn't get another job because of a recession. And this is a lot to tell you, and we'll unpack some of this over the course of many weeks. I did become a university professor, but I used to try to write out everything I was going to say. I still had fear, and my fear of public speaking didn't end until I had a Christian conversion experience. And so one of the things about Against the Odds is that it's going to be very much focused on my experiences, the lens that I see life through, which is Judeo-Christian. I had a Christian conversion experience late in my life, and I see how God orders footsteps, and He takes people that are very lowly, and He uses them in ways that they never anticipated. And like many of you, like when you're young, you're trying to figure out your identity, who you are, why were you born, and things can seem very confusing. And it's a journey that we are on, and I can tell you that where you start doesn't determine where you end. And your attitude is more important than your race, your gender, your social class, your sexual orientation, your attitude about life and what you believe. And if you believe you're a victim and the whole world is stacked against you, you're not going to be able to do very much. I believed in America. And when I did go to school, I was very much a person that was proud to be an American. I believed I lived in the greatest country in the world. I also believed that if I worked hard, it would make a difference. And when the civil rights movement took place in the 1960s and we had the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the 1965 Voting Rights Act, the 1968 Open Housing Act, I knew that the world had changed. It created opportunities for people like me. And many of the persons or individuals who came into my life, they steered me into academia, and that's how I became a university professor. It's not something that I would have ever imagined myself doing. And I went through a period in my late teens, early 20s, very depressed, suicidal, and suppose I had ended it there. If I had ended it there, there would be no Carol Swain story. There would be no Against the Odds. Hope to see you next week.